the headlines, the island's chief environmental health officer has indicated that state quarantine might not always be free. St. Lucia records its 19th case of COVID-19, and an East Winds resident is sick and tired of a fishy problem caused by his neighbor. All this and more is coming up in tonight's broadcast.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
It is Friday, the 5th of June, 2020. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News Edition on Flow Channel 117, Kiss FM, and our Caribbean Hot FM mobile app. I'm Rochelle Gonzalez, standing in for lovely Saint Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. In the interim of the COVID-19 response, returning nationals have been subjected to mandatory quarantine and testing at state-funded facilities completely free of charge for a period of 14 days. However, Chief Environmental Health Officer Parker Raghunanan says it may not be feasible for the government to continue in this fashion. He says in future, accommodation at the island's quarantine facilities may come at a cost to individuals.
St. Lucia's Chief Environmental Health Officer, Parker Raghunanan, says free quarantine for returning nationals may not continue indefinitely. On May 31st, Raghunanan featured on a panel discussion entitled COVID-19 Road to Recovery, Way Forward for Travel and Tourism. When questioned on the state's ability to continue to pick up the tab for returning nationals, the CEHO indicated that what presently exists will not be sustainable moving forward. He says cost allocation is subject to change as the government reviews its protocols and arrangements.
St. Lucia as a country cannot continue to indefinitely provide quarantine facilities at a cost to the state. People are coming in for various reasons, and we understand in the first instance that we had people who were stuck. So we hear about the persons who are on the cruise lines. They were stuck on the seas for weeks and months, and now we've received them. There are students who are overseas who are coming in, and we are making accommodation for them. But a St. Lucian cannot reasonably expect that they're coming home for a vacation or to visit a family, and the state has to bear the cost for that measure of quarantine.
He does not believe that the state is in a position financially to continue to bear these costs. He assured the public that if and when changes are made, they will be notified.
People will be told in advance that they're coming in and they need to be quarantined, and if and when there is a cost to that, they would also be aware of such a measure.
Raghunanan says protocols have been established to allow a greater number of returning nationals to pursue at-home quarantine. He outlined the procedure that they would have to undergo.
The issue of home quarantine is an option. It's not the preferred option for St. Lucia. However, if somebody is desirous of getting home quarantine, like I've said, they need to give notification in writing. And that should be preferably within a week of coming into St. Lucia.
And that should be addressed to
the Office of the Chief Medical Officer, who would make that determination. There is nothing that says that because you apply for home quarantine that you would be given the permission to be home quarantine. Like I've said, this is the measure that St. Lucia least wants to implement at this point in time.
As with all things in the context of a global pandemic, he reminds the public that this is a fluid situation and a variety of considerations must be made before moving forward with any adjustments to protocols. Jacques Wooding, Hot 7 News.
On Thursday, June 4th, the Department of Health issued a press release celebrating 32 days of no positive COVID-19 cases on island. However, they were left with no choice but to rescind that statement hours later, as out of a recent batch of tests, one was confirmed to be positive. Whilst the new case brought the total number of cases recorded in St. Lucia to 19, the confirmation gave the department a fresh reason to believe that the protocol, where repatriated St. Lucians are immediately placed into quarantine, was a wise call. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sharon Belmar-George gave the details on the new case.
On Thursday, June 4th, the Ezra Long Laboratory of the OKEU Hospital reported that from a batch of 23 tests conducted, there was one positive case of COVID-19. The individual is a 33-year-old female who is one of our nationals working on the cruise line. She was recently repatriated to St. Lucia and was placed in institutional quarantine as per national protocol. In keeping with the testing strategy for repatriated cruise line workers, she was swabbed to determine her COVID-19 status. Upon receiving the results confirming this case, the individual has now been placed in isolation for care and is doing well. Though in this instance, the positive COVID-19 result was from an individual in quarantine, the contact tracing process shall still apply. It should be noted that there is very low risk to other people in quarantine given their compliance to the requirements for minimizing risks of exposure to the virus. The Ministry of Health and Wellness, we note that this recently confirmed case demonstrates the importance of our protocol for having every returning national placed in quarantine and monitored for the required 14 days. It is with the commitment to protect the health of every single citizen we require adherence to this quarantine process. Though we do know it may create some amount of anxiety and even frustration for some, the overall benefit of protecting the health and safety of all will in the longer run outweigh these inconveniences. We ask that everyone continues to support our national effort to minimize the threat of COVID-19. We continue to advise on maintaining the standard recommendations to prevent the spread of infection. These include regular hand washing with soap and water or alcohol-based sanitizers where soap and water is not available, to cover your mouth and nose with disposable tissues when coughing and sneezing, and to use a homemade mask when in public, along with maintaining the 6 feet physical distance. The Ministry of Health will continue to provide further assistance.
In other news, one resident from the East Winds area in Grosley is speaking out on what may seem to be an environmental and health and safety issue. Marcus DeLise says this issue has been ongoing for over a year and it has become unbearable. He stated that authorities were notified in the beginning and attempts have been made by officials to have his neighbor clean and dispose of his waste properly, but the efforts were short-lived.
Dead fish, rodents, and dogs. These are the conditions that one resident of the East Winds area in Labrelock Bay has said he cannot live with. Marcus DeLise says his neighbor's blatant disregard for proper waste channels as well as his lack of care for his property is now starting to affect him.
I can't stay out in my yard. I have to run my AC all day after, again, several occasions of bringing this to his attention. The fish pond, he doesn't take care of the property of which you can see, COVID or not. The fish die ever so often. I don't know for what reason. They float, rats come in, they swim in, the fish starts to decay. Right? The odor that emanates is just unbelievable. Then, when his mind tells him, he would get anybody, and then they would come and use a scoop of fish net and take them off and bury it like he did today again, right next to the fence line. So the dogs would come, dig up that stuff, and all hell breaks loose.
DeLise says there have been many other incidents of that nature during his 5-year tenure in the area, one of which even warranted the involvement of environmental health officials.
What I realized was, as I cleaned up the property, I noticed a slimy sludge substance sort of coming up from his property beneath the fence line onto mine, and had the most horrible odor. So I went to him on quite a few occasions, and he was telling me it's the hotel next to us. You know, I'm saying, no, that's not making any sense. I'm not an idiot. You could see that there was an issue. However, he didn't attend to it after many, many efforts. So I went to the Beaches and Parks Commission and eventually the Environmental Health Ministry over at the Computer World Building. And the reason why I went through that level is because he just was not paying any attention to it. And this sludge stuff, which I still, to this day, believe may have been raw effluent from one of his properties. He owns some. He owns a bed and breakfast and guest house units up the road. Was going and flowing directly down into the gutter near the road.
The disgruntled neighbor says even after getting the authorities, very little effort was put to resolve the issue by the pond owner.
The first instance, you can see there's a PVC pipe there. He put it together to discharge whatever effluent, I'm presuming. and he never stuck it, and it would always come apart, come apart. Recently, I had to give glue to one of the helpers I saw around and assisted him while staying on my fence line to glue the pipe. So you can see I have made a concerted effort to assist him.
He has indicated that he will continue trying to bring the odor of the fish pond to his neighbors' attention. However, he believes he will once again need to involve the authorities, as the individual loves to intimidate persons in the area with his family name and title. The owner of the fish pond was not available for comment at the time of the interview. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
Violence erupted in Soufrière when a teenager was shot in the leg whilst another male's hand was left with a gaping wound. According to law officials, on Thursday the 4th of June at about 9:20 p.m., officers from the Soufrière police station received a report of a shooting along the New Development Road adjacent to the old copra factory. 19-year-old Wendell Joseph of New Development sustained a gunshot wound to his left leg, whilst another male identified as Tyron Burt of the same address received a laceration to his left palm with a cutlass. Reports indicate that the injured men were walking along the road when they were attacked by 4 masked individuals. The incident is being investigated. Stay with us, because when we come back, the Dennery Minibus Association apologizes for the actions of some of its members, minibus drivers call for change, and members of the public have their say on minibus operations.